Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because, guys, we are looking at a fundamental tectonic shift happening right now in the world of 3D creation. We're going to explore how artificial intelligence is radically altering industry-standard 3D software by replacing complex, rigid coding with just plain, natural English.
Okay, let's dive right into this. I want you to imagine, just for a second, completely eliminating the notoriously steep learning curve of professional 3D software. Imagine opening up a massive, complex program, and instead of hunting through hundreds of nested menus or trying to remember obscure hotkeys, you literally just type what you want to see and it happens. That reality? It's no longer science fiction. It's actually here right now.
Here's our agenda for today's Explainer. First, the Blender learning curve. Second, Anthropic enters the foundation. Third, English is the new Python. Fourth, lowering the entry barrier. And finally, supercharging professional workflows.
Starting with Section 1, the Blender learning curve, or the steep climb to 3D mastery.
Historically, mastering Blender required a massive cognitive load. It's an incredibly powerful tool, but getting what's in your head onto the screen has always demanded a ton of technical translation. Just think about the stark difference between the old way and this new reality. The traditional Blender Python API syntax just to change a material's roughness is rigid. It requires memorization, and literally one typo breaks the whole thing. But the new way? It's just a natural language command. Make this a shiny gold material. For years, the gap between describing what we want and actually executing it has been frustratingly wide. Well, until now.
For so long, artists have had to battle these exact workflow pain points. We're talking hours. Literally hours spent hunting through sparse documentation just to find one specific command. Or, getting tangled up in these massive geometry node setups, trying to figure out why a single math node decided to completely break your visual effect. Honestly, you basically had to be a software engineer just to execute basic art.
Which brings us to Section 2. Anthropic enters the foundation, a corporate patron for open source.
Take a look at this incredibly rapid sequence of events from April 2026 that completely changed the workflow paradigm. First, Anthropic launches Claude Opus 4.7, right? A model highly capable of advanced software engineering. Then, boom, on April 28th, they aggressively expand their reach into the creative sector, releasing 9 new connectors for tools like Adobe and Autodesk. But the absolute game changer for our explainer today? They officially joined the Blender Development Fund as a corporate patron, integrating Claude directly with the 3D software.
This quote from Blender Foundation CEO Francesco Citti really hits the nail on the head. He notes that this support is dedicated toward core development, specifically maintaining and improving foundational features like the Blender Python API. So, Anthropic isn't just dropping a neat third-party plugin and walking away. They are actively funding the foundation itself. It is a massive corporate endorsement of open-source synergy.
Moving on to Section 3. English is the new Python, introducing Blender MCP. Let's see how all this builds into the actual technology. So, let's talk about the tool enabling all of this. It's called Blender MCP. Now, let's clear up the technical jargon real quick. MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. Essentially, it's a local translator. It acts as a bridge running directly on your machine that takes your plain English prompts, translates that intent into specific Blender API calls, and then shoots them over a local network socket to execute immediately in Blender.
And honestly, setting this up is incredibly practical. As documented by community creators, it's just a few quick steps. You install Python and the UV package manager via PowerShell, add a couple of lines to your Claude desktop config file, install the local Blender add-on, and connect it via local port 9876. Once those two programs are talking to each other, the magic actually begins.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the sheer scope of what this can do. Claude isn't just spitting out text anymore. Thanks to scene inspection, Claude actually sees your workspace. It queries the scene graph, so it knows exactly what objects exist. You can tell it to manipulate objects, pull in external assets from libraries like Polyhaven or Hyper3D, or even write and execute complex Python scripts instantly. It's basically a real-time interactive copilot actively sitting right inside the software with you.
This leads right into Section 4, lowering the entry barrier and the community reaction.
Whenever entry barriers drop like this, there are always ripples, and we're seeing quite a bit of debate on platforms like Reddit. Like this user, Quantum Modulus, points out, there is real anxiety among entry-level freelancers right now. The fear is that if your primary service was simply knowing how to navigate the software to do basic scene setups or low-poly product renders, well, those 5-tier gigs might be disrupted. If the AI can just push the buttons for anyone, The market suddenly demands a much higher level of actual artistic vision.
But, on the flip side, for absolute beginners trying to learn the craft, this technology is acting as the perfect tutor. Instead of getting frustrated and quitting, newcomers can just ask the AI to generate a low-poly dragon scene, or switch the viewport, and the AI will execute the task while explaining how it works right there side by side. It completely removes the cognitive load of memorizing syntax, letting you focus entirely on the core concepts of 3D space.
And finally, Section 5, supercharging professional workflows, debugging at the speed of thought.
Let's shift over to the massive productivity gains being unlocked for seasoned 3D pros. This quote perfectly captures the vibe right now. Professionals are hooking Blender MCP up to Claude and using it to instantly bypass tedious technical roadblocks. When a massive geometry node setup breaks, instead of spending hours hunting down one tiny bug, they literally just ask their AI copilot to inspect the scene, diagnose the logic, and fix it. Like this user said, for an artist, it literally feels like magic.
Think about how far we've come so fast. I mean, just recently, professionals were dealing with the old way, trying to use AI by pasting code into a chat window and then getting back these massive, frustrating walls of text or JSON node lists that they'd have to manually recreate in Blender. Now, we've bypassed that whole headache completely. The AI is directly inside the application, autonomously diagnosing and executing fixes on the fly.
So, the crucial point is this. While this tech is incredibly powerful, it definitely has limitations. Claude AI doesn't know if your lighting feels emotionally off. It has no idea if your composition lacks balance. It's an engine for technical execution, essentially an expert Python coder on call. It still relies entirely on human artistic vision, judgment, and taste to actually drive the creative direction.
Which leaves us with this final thought for today's explainer. We are rapidly approaching a world where the technical barriers to 3D art drop to practically zero. If anyone can translate their ideas into 3D space using just plain English, the defining factor of a great artist is no longer going to be software mastery. So how will pure human imagination and artistic taste define this next era of creativity? I invite you to keep exploring this fascinating topic. And seriously, think about what you might build when the only limit is your imagination. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll catch you next time.